We also spoke to journalist and World Affairs broadcaster Neil Clark. He says that Russia succeeded in changing the momentum of the Syrian conflict.
The Russian intervention, which began last September, has been a game changer. It's radically changed the situation on the ground. ISIS has been pushed back. Radical jihadists backed by the West have been put back. My only concern now is that this announcement may just encourage the enemies of Syria, the countries that want Syria to be divided and partitioned. It might encourage them to step up their backing of the so-called rebels. But I would have thought that President Putin has got some kind of undertaking from the West about this, and that he wouldn't be announcing this if he didn't feel sure that that wouldn't happen.
The lines of Western politicians and the media have been on shifting sands since the start of the Russian campaign.
Questions are raised about exactly who they're targeting.
Russian aircraft launched strikes against rebel positions earlier.
The series of airstrikes on opponents of its ally, President Bashar al-Assad.
The Russians are coming in to basically prop up the regime of Bashar al-Assad.
Their airstrikes have helped ISIL.
It's only strengthening ISIL.
Russia's been subjected to a fair bit of criticism throughout the campaign in Syria, but following last night's withdrawal announcement, concerns that Russia would get bogged down have proven groundless.
Vladimir Putin is absolutely right to remove Russian forces from Syria. This just proves that he is a leader, and you need to have dialogue with him, not isolate him.
It's a rational decision, because ISIL is now on the defensive.
President Putin was acting very rationally. The campaign in Syria is an example of a successful military operation which the West should look up to. This is a clever decision. Russia has shown that it's no longer the big bad wolf as it's been portrayed for many months.
Among other reaction, the United States should learn from Russia's withdrawal from Syria. So says the US presidential candidate for the Green Party and a former US ambassador.
This is a wonderful step forward, and this is the direction I think we need to go in, not just the Russians, but the U.S. as well. And for 15 years, the U.S. and allies have put $6 trillion, that's from the U.S. alone, into these failed wars for oil, which are basically wars on terror. We need to work together with the Russians, not only on the ceasefire, as well as on a peace process. There is a win-win solution here, and it starts with a weapons embargo, a ceasefire, and actually seizing the funds of those countries who continue to fund terrorism.
I think that Washington should welcome Mr. Putin's decisions to reduce the number of Russian troops inside Syria. It's clear that both the Russian government and the United States government had a common objective here, and that is to try to bring some humanitarian relief to the terrible crisis that has been going on inside Syria.
Moscow's decision to pull out the bulk of its troops came right on the eve of the bitter anniversary for Syria, because Tuesday marks 5 years since the onset of that bloody and brutal conflict which changed the course of modern history. From the start of Syria's protest movements, the resulting civil war became the epicenter of the greatest humanitarian crisis in more than half a century, and challenged world leaders to confront an unprecedented wave of terrorism.
Total collapse of any effort by the Assad government to work with their own people. He needs to get out of the way.
Quite clear that this is a regime that is hell-bent on killing, murdering and maiming its own citizens.
Instead of a triumph of democracy and progress, we have violence, poverty and a social disaster. I can't help asking those who have created this situation, do you realize now what you've done?